to write a poem on the board, and I want to see if any of you recognize the form of this poem. Does that poem look familiar to anybody, or have you ever seen a poem that looks a little bit like that? Yeah, Eva?
Is it a haiku?
It's a haiku, yeah. It is a haiku. Now, how many of you remember haiku or remember learning about haiku? Okay, you do? When did you learn about haiku? Do you remember?
Elementary school.
Elementary school? Your teachers had to write a haiku, perhaps? All right. What do you remember about the form of a haiku?
The first line is 5 syllables, the second line is 7 syllables, and the last line is 5 syllables.
That's right. Anything else that you remember about a haiku?
It's supposed to be about nature.
Okay, about nature. Is there anything else that you remember? Anything that happens in the third line, for instance? There a little bit of a surprise or something that happens in the third line. So kind of changes direction a little bit, perhaps. All right, so that's a haiku. We're going to learn something similar today, a little bit similar, that we're going to explore a different kind of poetry. It's a poem that's a formal poem like this, and a formal poem has, you know, a certain structure to it that's always the same. And, but the poem that we're going to learn comes from the country Korea. And I know that some of you have been studying a little bit about Korea in your literature class with Mr. Davies. So, so I'm going to actually pass out some poems that are called Sijo. And Sijo is spelled like this, but it's pronounced like this. Sijo. Sijo. And so I'm going to pass out some examples that we're going to look at together. And we're going to see just what this kind of poem is about. This is something that was written a long time ago. A lot of them were written, that you'll find were written in the 1500s, some of the famous ones. They continue to be written today, so it has a long history, and we'll talk a little bit about that history. But let me get some in your hands right now. I wanted to start with something that they might have heard of, and that's why I put up a haiku, because American students often in elementary school or somewhere along the line in elementary or middle school have the opportunity to study a haiku, and usually they can get it, and they get it in their heads. It's 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. I can do this. And so that's something that I thought they could remember. And it has some kind of relation to a Sijo in that we're going to talk about 3 lines. We're going to talk about syllables in some way. And so maybe it won't be so intimidating to them, and maybe they can refresh their memories about haiku and get a little confidence. So after I refreshed their memory about the haiku, I wanted them to look at some of the famous Sijo from the Sijo masters. And I wanted to start with one that I thought would be easy for them to understand. And so I thought that we would look at one that was about Taesan, the mountain, being very high, and people try to climb it, or they don't think they can climb it, but if they have the will, then they can do it. And I thought that that would be a good one to start with. And I thought that because that one's often taught in schools to inspire students, I thought that they would understand that. You have to work hard. And the goal may seem very, very high, but you can achieve it if you work hard and you have the patience and the perseverance to get there. And I think they did get it. I think that they understood that and understood what it was trying to say to them. Okay, would somebody volunteer to read the poem for us? Okay, yes.
Taesan is mighty high, they say, but it still is a hill beneath the sky. Climbing it and climbing. There's no reason you can't climb all the way. It's people who won't try to climb, who say, that hill's too high. It's too high.
Very nice, okay. All right, what I'd like for you to notice is that this poem is how many lines in this version? 6. Okay, but if you look at the Korean translation, it's how many lines? 3. All right, so basically that's something to keep in mind, that in the Korean it's 3 lines. It's just that the lines are a little bit long, and so we have them divided up into 2 parts. Each line is divided into 2 parts, which makes it 6. You don't have to write them that way. You can write them as a 3-line poem. All right, somebody tell me what they think this poem is about. What do you think? What is this poem saying to you? Kind of give me the story of the poem. Any volunteers?
Different perspectives.
Okay, what do you think? What are the different perspectives in the poem?
Whereas one person would say the hill is too high or the mountain is too high to climb, others who have climbed would say that it is achievable.
That it is achievable. Okay, very good. All right. So even though the mountain seems insurmountable, it is achievable if what?
You try.
If you try. If you try. All right. Well, it probably would not surprise you to learn that this poem is taught a lot in Korean schools. Why? Why do you think it might be taught in schools a lot to school children?
To instill values of attempting to achieve things.
Okay. Hard work.
Like work ethics.
The work ethic. Okay. Very nice. Yes. Would one of my Korean students like to read the poem in Korean for us? Okay.
세상이 높다 하되 하늘 아래 메이로다. 오르고 또 오르면 모르를 리 없건만은 사람이 제한이 모르고 매일 높다 하더라.
Very nice. Thank you. Okay. I understood every word. No, not very good. Very good. Let's take a look at another one. Turn the page over. And there's one by Chung Chol, who's a very famous Korean Sijo writer from the 1500s. But this time we're going to do it a little bit differently. I'm actually going to ask for a couple of volunteers. I need 2 volunteers. Who wants to come up? You have to stand right out here. All right, these 2 guys right here. All right, let me think. Who's my old man and who's my younger guy?
I wonder who.
And you can be the old man.
Okay, you're going to be the old man.
All right.
Okay? Come on over. You don't even need a paper.
Okay.
But you do.
I do.
Yeah. All right. Come on over here. Right over here. Now, everybody take a moment just to read through the poem by yourself. You get to read this.
All right. Okay.
Okay? So what's a staff?
It's like pole.
A pole. So where do you put it usually?
The ground.
On the ground. Right. So usually you're going to put it down like that.
Okay.
You're a very old monk.
Okay.
Okay? You're a very old monk. You might be younger and full of energy. All right? Come on over here. You stand over here. All right. So I'm going to read the poem. You're going to walk across the bridge, because that's what you're doing in the poem.
Okay.
Okay? But when it gets to your part, you get to say it. You want to practice your line once?
Stay a while, Reverend Sir. Let me ask you where you go.
Okay, so you can do that with full of pep and energy, okay?
Sure. Wait, so I just walk?
All you do is walk. You don't have a hard
like an
roll.
old person?
Yeah, you're an old person, you're gonna walk. So why don't you come back here? You're walk like, let me see your old man walk. Your old man walk. Let's go.
Dang, this is kind of hard.
Yeah. Okay, good job. Now, when he says, he just points his stuff, you don't look at him when he talks to you, nothing. You just point.
Just keep going.
And you just keep
Okay.
on walking
All right.
with your eyes on the prize,
All right,
okay?
eyes on the prize.
All right, very good. All right, let's go. A shadow strikes the water below. A monk passes by on the bridge.
Stay a while, Reverend Sir. Let me ask you where you go.
He just points his staff at the white clouds and keeps on his way without turning. Awesome. Okay, good job. Now let me ask you where you go. let me ask you, what do you think is going on in this poem? We heard from this side of the room. Let's see if we can get some from this side of the room. What do you think's going on? Okay, Gina?
I personally think, like, metaphorically, it's about, like, an old man's death.
An old man's death?
Because he's pointing at the sky, which means he's going up to the heaven.
Sort of like passing over because he's crossing a bridge.
Okay. Yeah, he's passing the bridge.
Maybe the younger man is like taking his place. Like maybe the old man taught him something.
Like a role.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you. But the old man doesn't speak, right?
Yeah.
He just points. Now, what are some opposite words or what are some of those balance ideas that we get in this poem? What would you say? Contrasting words?
Stay and keep on his way.
Stay and go, or stay and keep on his way. What else do you notice?
Oh, like don't turn back. Don't turn back.
Don't turn back.
Like,
Keep
forward.
Yep, keep focused. Okay. What else do you notice?
There's a shadow, but he's on a bridge.
There's a shadow, yeah. What's forming the shadow?
The clouds.
He's fast.
What?
He's fast.
Oh, interesting. Okay, you're thinking metaphorically, you're thinking literally. Very interesting. Okay, so you've got the shadow, you've got the clouds, you've got the past, but maybe you're leaving your past and walking on to your goal, something new. So if you had to sum up the theme, what would you say the theme of the poem is?
Death.
Death? Tell me more. Or anybody?
I think it's more like the path to death.
The path to death? Okay.
I think of it more in a positive way, like the destination of life.
The destination of life. Okay.
Always moving forward.
What?
Always moving forward.
Always moving forward towards your destination of life. And your destination of life might be death eventually, of course, right? But it's the journey that might be important, right? That's one way of looking at it, certainly. So it's a positive spin that you're staying focused. I think it's really, really interesting that he doesn't speak. He just points. Well, I think that there are two things. One is that for students who don't really get the story of the poem, they don't quite understand what's happening, it's a visual representation. But the other one is that they see, oh, this is something that has a story that we can actually do, and it makes it a little bit more engaging. They're not just sitting in their seats. High school students love to get up, and so a couple of them got up. And they're not just having to listen to me. They're getting to look at their classmates, and they're getting to let their classmates teach them a little bit about the poem. So in both of these poems, if you take a look at them, what are some similarities that you notice?
Oh, 3 sentences.
What?
3 sentences.
3 sentences. They're both 3 sentences, okay? What else do you notice? Mm-hmm.
They're both about like more abstract qualities than the actual real meaning of the story.
Okay, so they're both about abstract ideas. They're about more than they appear to be. Right, I think that was what you were saying. They're about more than they appear to be.
They both have dialogue.
Oh, they do. Let's see. Yeah, they've got, the people say that hill's too high, it's too high, and in this one, stay a while, Reverend Sir, let me ask you where you go. Very good.
They both have like a surprise in the stuff.
Wow, where's the surprise?
The 5th line.
The 5th line, or the 3rd line. Yeah, the 3rd line, they have a little surprise. That's great, yes. So we have, what is the surprise in the first poem?
That they're saying that it's possible for the hill to be climbed, and then the other people are saying, no, it's not, I can't.
Okay, so it's people, right? It's people who say. So there's that opposing voice coming in. Very good. And what's the surprise in the other poem, the Chongchou poem?
It says, stay a while. Just asking.
He says stay a while, but then what does the monk do?
He just didn't say anything.
He doesn't say anything. That's the surprise. He just points. Yeah. So there's your surprise. So the surprise both times comes where? In which line? The 3rd line. at the very beginning. Great, so now we're starting to see a little bit about what a Sijo is. It's a poem of 3 lines, which might be divided into 6 if you're writing in English, but a poem of 3 lines that has a twist in the 3rd line at the very beginning of the 3rd line. Now the other thing, remember when we were talking about the haiku, it had certain syllable count. How many syllables are in these poems? How many syllables are in these poems? If you count them up real fast. 15 per line. So 45, right. So 3 lines of about 15 syllables, so there are about 45 syllables in the poem, correct? Very good. Okay, now we're really starting to get somewhere. The other thing, though, is I want you to notice that each line is made up of phrases. And let me give you a sheet to help you with that. So if you take a look at the beginning of this, I have the Jeongchul poem printed here. What you're going to find is there are about 4 phrases per line, 4 groupings of syllables. Okay? And so a shadow strikes the water below. A monk passes by on a bridge. Stay a while, Reverend Sir. Let me ask you where you go. He just points his staff at the white clouds and keeps on his way without turning. So it should feel like it has phrases. It should feel like it's an unfolding. There's a Harvard professor, David McCann, who's a Sijo expert, who described it in a way that I found helpful, which was it unfolds like a flower. If you think of a flower that's sort of folded up and then the sun hits it or the rain hits it or whatever it is that makes a flower unfold, it just opens up gradually. So it kind of opens up gradually and then eventually it dies, right? But so the poem should feel like it's opening up gradually and then just sort of eventually dying out. So that's kind of what we're going for. That you can see the structure then of a Sijo in the basic standard syllable count. So the first 2 lines should feel almost exactly the same. It's a theme. You establish a theme at the beginning. You expand on that theme. Then you introduce a twist in the 3rd line of about 3 syllables. Actually, it's pretty rigid. 3-syllable twist at the beginning of the 3rd line. The next phrase tends to be the longest phrase, probably about 5 syllables, and then it just sort of fades out. That's the structure of a Sijo. Okay? Doesn't have to be exact, except for that twist usually is 3 syllables, pretty firm. So what I'd like for you to do, and you can use a question or an emotional word for that twist. It can be, something kind of strong and surprising, and then it kind of fades out. But let me give you some examples of ones that were written by people more your age. I think that's when I gave them the instruction on how you write a Sijo. From the examples that we studied, we said, what is a Sijo? So I didn't just start with a definition of a Sijo. A Sijo is a 3-line poem with a twist, of 40. The whole poem has 45 syllables. I didn't hand that to them. I made them sort of discover that through my various strategies. Let's take a couple of poems, see what they have in common, what's surprising about the 3rd line. Now let's go back and remember the haiku. It has some syllable count. Do we have syllable count in the Sijo? How many syllables are there? And they were able to discover many, many things about what a Sijo is on their own. And so then I handed them a sheet that had, more of the how to do the phrasing, how to write the twist, and then they were able to see what the whole picture of a Sijo is. The Sejong Cultural Society in Chicago runs contests for high school students. And these high school students write Sijo, and they compete for prizes. And the first couple of poems are some of the winners of the contest, or some of the prize winners from the contest. So let's see what made them successful. Okay, so the first one. Anybody want to read the first one for us? Can I get a volunteer? Okay, Megan?
A single soul was lost today, deep in the river Yalu, thrashing, twisting, torn to shreds, with color quickly fading. On the bridge, a small boy laughs, holding out his empty shoe.
Okay, great. What do you notice about that poem that is a kind of a surprise?
The boy is moving.
What's that?
The boy is laughing while the previous lines describes destruction.
Ah, so you were reading it and you thought, oh, this is going to be a sad poem, right? But then it turned out it's not so sad after all. Yes?
You think it's about like someone losing their life because they say soul, but then it's brought together with the whole shoe thing.
Right. So it's a pun on the shoe and the shoe's soul. Yes. So it turns out to be more lighthearted than you previously thought, right? Okay, so there is a twist. On the bridge is the twist in the poem, followed by a small boy laughs, and that gives you the idea that you've really changed directions there. But then holding out his empty shoe goes back to the single soul was lost today. So it's kind of returned to the beginning. So there's a theme. It develops the theme in the second line. There's the twist, and then the return to the theme with the empty shoe going back to a single soul. See it? All right, let's look at the next one then. Will you read the next one to yourselves, and then we'll read it out loud. You have to get a girl to read this one.
You ask me what I'm humming. I tell you I'm humming about nothing. This is untrue because I'm humming about you all day long. Who am I to tell you you're nothing when you are my song?
Yeah, very nice. Okay, any thoughts about this one?
This poem's basically about a crush.
A crush? Okay, tell me more.
It's like she is asked by her crush about like why she's humming, why does she feel really good, but like she wants to hide her feelings toward the guy. So like she's just basically keeping it to herself, and then it's written in the poem.
Yeah, so she's keeping it to herself, and then what's that beautiful third line? What's that about?
Why is she lying? Why is she not saying the truth?
Yeah, why am I lying? Why am I calling you nothing when you are my song? I wish I'd written that poem. I love that poem. So it's so nice. So anyway, who am I is a good twist there. Who am I? All right. Oh well, we have to read Text Me, I guess. I would call Text Me a bilingual poem. There's the text language, and then there's a little bit of the regular language. So I don't know who can read text language pretty well. You want to try it? Who wants to read this one? I'll read it. LOL, smiley face. I would love to go with you. Are you picking me up? I'm so excited. See you at 8? What the heck? Why are you not texting me back? Did I say too much?
I think the twist was more at the end of that one.
Did I say too much?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But the twist can also be an emotional word, like a strong emotional word. And I think that was what she was going for. But you're right. It does have kind of that surprising ending, doesn't it? And then if you turn the page again, you will find we have one by Eva on the back page. You want to read that one for us, Eva?
Sure. Confrontation. I face my cruelest enemy, whose hateful words stain my skin. Staring into her hungry eyes, my oldest, closest friend. I turn away from the mirror, never to hear her lies again.
And this one was published in the Lit magazine last year, the literary magazine from RMA. Beautiful poem. I love it. And I actually worked with this poem at a workshop in California last summer. So it's great. So I Turn Away is a beautiful twist there. Just a beautiful title too, Confrontation. Not all of them have titles, but that's a particularly good one. And then Johnny Wong from RMA had Stallion. Anybody want to read that one for us? Okay. Ready?
Holding his head proudly, the great stallion tramples his many foes. Dodging and weaving, his wild spirit surges against control. With one move, I make him gallop across the checkered board.
It's a nice twist, isn't it? With one move, because it's obviously about what? Chess, sure. So, everybody got that one, right? So, okay, how are we feeling? We feel like we can do this? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. How about if we try a Sijo Schnell to mix some languages? What, anybody German people in here? Anybody take German? What's Schnell mean?
Fast.
Fast. So let's do a Sijo Schnell. Let's do a fast Sijo. Okay? How about trying a 10-minute Sijo? 10 minutes. It can be about anything you want it to be about. You see that these are a great, vast array of topics, aren't they? Okay? A lot of times the traditional Sijos are about love or nature or big topics. Yours doesn't have to be. It can be about rain, it can be about school, it can be about whatever you want it to be about. Okay? Let's give it a go. 10 minutes. Well, I think I showed them a lot of poems that were written by people their age, and I think that is what my strategy was. Look, this doesn't have to just be written by a Sijo master. These can be kids who won contests, but they can also be kids who didn't win contests. They can also be kids from your own school. They can also be ESL students. There are a variety of poems right here in this little packet I put together for you, and you can look at these, we can read them, we can laugh about them, and because some of them were kind of funny, some of them were about Wi-Fi, some of them were about topics that kids care about, some of them were about relationships with, you know, crushes that they might have on other kids, you know. So I try to keep it, the topics, things that they could relate to. And then I think when you ask them to write a 10-minute poem, maybe it's not so scary because they think, well, you know, all these kids could do it, maybe I can do it too. And 10 minutes isn't much time, but then I said, before I asked them to share, I said, I know these aren't finished, I know these aren't perfect, so would you share what you have so far? And I think that's also a little bit of a break for them. So, oh, it doesn't have to be perfect. I can just share what I'm working on. I know that you might not have finished. Sijo Schnell is a little fast, right? To use a tautology. But it's okay. We can just see how you're developing it. So I know it's probably a little bit scary, but anybody want to just share theirs, knowing that they're just 10-minute poems, and we don't expect perfection, we just want to see how they're doing. So, anybody want to give it a go? Who will be brave for me? Thank you, Eva.
Okay, mine's untitled. Born from a spark, climbing into the night sky, a roaring, raging beauty, leaping, fueled by passion. Be not the murderous rain, be the wind to make her dance.
Oh, I love that. Can you read it one more time for us?
Born from a spark, climbing into the night sky, a roaring, raging beauty, leaping, fueled by passion. Be not the murderous rain, be the wind to make her dance.
Nice. Very nice. So your twist is?
That there's like it introduces a relationship, and that you don't want to put out the fire, you want to
make it dance. But what was the twist, the three syllable twist?
Be not the murderous rain.
Be not the would be. Okay, very good. Anybody else want to share one? Thank you.
Mine's titled Closet. I stand in darkness, the door shuts out all light. I scream, but nobody is around to hear. I feel it, I grab the switch and turn it on.
I feel it?
Yeah.
Is that yours? Yeah, very good. Okay. Yours is a scary one. Okay. Who else wants to take? Yeah, Jonathan?
Ever sung the battle cry, fighting on the still of night, marching toward the final line, waiting for the victory, peacefully waving the flag of the white flag warrior.
Okay, so peacefully is your twist. Very good. Go ahead, Gina.
Outrageous soldiers marching endlessly on the street, singing their song proudly and celebrating their success in intimidating citizens. While inside, I sip my hot tea and watch storm passing my house.
Oh. All right, so what did you think? Do you think this is something that you can do, that you feel comfortable doing? I tell you what, you really need to do it about 3 times and get the feel of it, get the rhythm of it, you know, practice it. And I know that you'll have an assignment to write some Sijo, maybe 2 or 3, but keep the one that you're working on, you know, because that could be one of them. But they're really fun to write and they're really interesting. The longer line allows you to develop, you know, it's a short poem, but you have those 4 phrases per line, which gives you a lot of time to develop emotion and feelings and contrasts, and you know, you can do a lot. So what did you think? Did you think that that would be something that you'd enjoy working on and writing? Okay, very good. And we didn't get time to explore a real bilingual one, but the one, Huang Qini, the woman writer from your sheet, it's bilingual in it, that it's written in Korean and in Chinese. And that's something that some of you who speak 2 languages might be interested in doing, is trying to write a bilingual Sijo. That could be really, really exciting. You know, how do you do that? How do you write half of the line in one language and half of the line in another and make them play off of each other? But thank you for being a fabulous class. You really worked with me and really helped me out, and tried and participated, and I so value your efforts, so thank you very much. Of course, that won't be just today, but what the kids will do now is that for homework, they will write 3 Sijo, and they will turn those in, and then they will select their best one to be graded. And so then they will have written 3, they will choose their favorite. Actually, if I were to do another class with them, what I would ask them to do is to pick their favorite one, share it with a classmate, see if the classmate can identify the twist, see if the classmate can check their phrasing and their syllable count, and see if the classmate has any ideas for improvement. And I would let them actually even work on it more, and then finally decide to turn it in for a grade or a completion. When I have more time to teach Sijo, what I like to do is start with an overview of Korea, and so I use the PowerPoint that's on the Sejong Cultural Society website, and that helps educate kids about South Korea before we even do Sijo. And that is, I guess that's an ideal way to do it. First, because kids have a lot of questions about South Korea, and some kids, American kids, don't really even know what countries are surrounding Korea. They don't know what language is spoken in Korea. They don't know what products are Korean. They don't know much about that whole history. They don't understand the transition from Chinese to Hangul. So I think the website PowerPoint is extremely helpful in introducing kids to the culture and history of South Korea. I think keep working on it. you know, certainly 45 minutes, you can teach the form of Sijo in 45 or 50 minutes, but you have to give them time to practice it too. And you have to give them time to get ideas from you and other students about how to make it a little bit deeper, how to maybe work for more contrasts or balance in the poem, how to develop your theme and counter theme. I think kids can help each other a lot if we had paired them up, if we had had time to pair them up and let them talk to each other about their poems. That could have been really, really good. So that's what I would do, is not make it totally fast, but this was a good first step for instruction, but I think letting them revise and revise would be really helpful. And also, not to just write one, but to write multiple Sijo, I think would help a lot.
We looked at the introduction to Korean culture partly to see that they knew a lot more about Korean culture than they realized they knew through the opening introduction, both pop culture, corporate culture, etc. And they found the structure helpful to writing, and so they did so. And of course, then we try to encourage them, because the group process helps as well, to share their product with each other. And they do that at first reluctantly, and then increasingly openly they share what they've written together. Of course, they don't have to share what they've written, although I do turn it into an assignment because I want them to submit to this year's contest as well. One of the things that was helpful to me was the concept of economy in writing, which is don't use useless words, cut back on verbosity, which is something I teach in composition. So the fact that this had a number, almost a mathematical requirement to the format of the poetry, whereby they had to keep the lines to 3 or to 6 half lines, and they had to keep the syllables to a general number, and they had to follow the intellectual structure. I got them to write what I considered first a more traditional, like nature image Sijo, and then I asked them to do one any way they like, whether it's more modern, playful, humorous, contemporary, because I noticed some good examples of kids being playfully creative with the traditional structure. So we looked at both trying to use the traditional structure and letting the kids experiment with it as well. But keeping the structure gave them a discipline to help write.
Well, last year was the first time I had ever written Sijo, and I kind of found it the same experience as writing haikus, because there was structure, but you got to play inside the lines, and that was really fun for me. Well, my Sijo is called Confrontation. Basically, it's a girl looking in a mirror, but you don't know it yet. She's looking in a mirror and she's looking at herself and thinking of all the things that she's put herself through. And she thinks of all the mean things that she's said to herself, and then at the end she turns away from the mirror and decides never to listen to those things anymore. I guess that was kind of my own social commentary, kind of advocating for self-love and self-acceptance, because I know that in our culture, a lot of girls are taught to dislike themselves, and that's not something that I want my daughter to do. So I guess the easy part about Sijo is you already have a format, so you kind of know what to do. I think the challenging part is once you start going and you have that creative spark, you kind of want to get rid of the format. You don't really want to have to use this many syllables and put this word here. You want to be able to write freely, but it's good to keep yourself contained. So I think Sijo did. It's definitely very interesting. I had never heard of this type of poetry before. I love it the same way that I love haiku, just because it's just very like holistic and it makes me feel peaceful. So I think that that's my segue into learning more about Korea.
The poem, The Stallion, and it's about like the free spirit of a horse. However, it's restrained to a tiny chess piece. It's like trying to break free from the bonds. What I found interesting was while it was restraining, it was also free at the same time. It was less restricting than the usual structure that you had to write poetry.
Randolph-Macon Academy was founded in 1892, and we've been a military school since the early 1900s. And we're co-educational since the 1970s. And we're very proud of our college entrances. Students have gone to Harvard, Princeton, MIT, and other fine colleges across the United States in the past 5 years. And so we're very, very proud of our heritage with the students. And we should say that the students come from all around the world. So we're very proud of our diversity too. But we think it's most important that the dynamic between each teacher and student is a powerful working together, a powerful team. And so we really pride ourselves in our teachers knowing our students on a very personal level. We're a small classroom environment where there's probably 13 to 15 students per teacher in the classroom, and each teacher is going to get to know each student on a level that's going to make them excited and curious about the subject they're learning. So we're very special in that regard, we believe.